women see a guy who is successful and intelligent and winning the competition, and they do feel desire and attraction. And I think culturally we've lost the fact that that doesn't work for men. I want a woman who takes pride in her role as my submissive, as my woman, as my wife, as my partner.
Our question today is from Grace, who complains that she feels completely unsupported by other women for her decision to submit to her man in and out of the bedroom. Besides being his submissive during BDSM play, she also defers major decisions to him. She will try her best not to argue with him, will wear what he tells her to wear, and even let him control their finances. She trusts him, thinks of him as the man, and will call him daddy and sir. However, she feels very uncomfortable when other women are around because she feels women these days look down on this kind of behavior.
This is in many ways much more of a cultural question than a BDSM question per se. I had a very interesting conversation with a marriage counselor, and one of the things she pointed out is that we still have some cultural acceptance of the notion of what makes a good husband. Is he earns money, he's not sitting around with no job wasting time playing video games, he does work around the house, he kills the bugs and protects them and is a good father and is affectionate and all these things. But we have completely lost a cultural view of what constitutes a good wife or a good girlfriend. Like, well, we know what that is, but we're no longer willing to say it. It is still those same things that, oh, well, I cook for my man and I clean for him and I am not argumentative and I defer to his authority and his lead, and those things still are what make a good wife. And again, not something we can talk about culturally, but in a group of guys, if one guy's wife cooks and cleans and is great in bed and is fun to be around and agreeable and not argumentative, there's a jealousy there from other guys that are dealing with boss bitches who, like, you can't tell me what to do, and, oh, we're 50-50 around that. Well, a guy might accept that, but he's jealous of the guy who has a girlfriend who fits the older narrative, what constitutes a good wife. And so we know it, but we can't say it. Now, what's happening here to some degree is she is being that cultural good woman, and it is undercutting narrative of other women, because in many ways, I think other women are well aware that their men would prefer this woman, if given a choice, than them. And that's why she gets this negative reaction. If this were something trivial where or the opposite, like, let's say, oh, my husband really likes women who are more voluptuous and a little bit fatter and carry more fat, so I actually deliberately overeat to make sure that he's whatever. She's not going to get any pushback from women on that because they know that their guys would not prefer that.
Sure.
It's fine, right? So, cool, yeah, you're taking care of your man and you're good, yeah, great, right? Anything that gets you out of the competition for my guy. Yeah.
Here's a donut. I support all women.
Exactly right. But when she's engaging in behaviors that they are not willing to engage in for their boyfriends, and they know in their hearts that their boyfriends would rather it, well, then you're going to end up with a negative pushback. I mean, small example, I think this is also a similar issue with dating younger. So, for instance, I've dated younger women who are gorgeous and very attractive, and there are challenges with some of my female friends that are my age, because do they want to incorporate this gorgeous 27-year-old into when we're hanging out as couples with their husband? Some of them are mature enough to be okay with it, and they have great relationships, and they're pretty comfortable, like, with the fact that their husband would desire them based on their history and the compatibility and all those things. But some of them are more insecure about the aging process and about their looks and about, like, whatever. And there's tension there then, because they believe, rightly or wrongly, they may not be right about their husband, but they believe their husband might prefer the younger girl. So I do think that there are these intrasexual competitions that happen, And specifically in the topic of submission and maybe more traditional gender roles, I think that women wish men wanted the boss babe, but are well aware that that's not actually the case. And they wish that they could be desired for being in that masculine role and say, I make so much money and I have such a high profile job. Aren't you attracted to me? No, I respect you, but it's a very male respect. I respect you the way I respect another guy. I don't want you. I'm not turned on by you. And that's a problem, because do you want me to relate to you as another guy? That's the feminist view. That's equality, is I am looking at you the way I look at another man and say, man, that's damn impressive. Now I'm going to try and compete with you. Now I'm going to try and tear you down. Now I'm going to try and do better than you. Maybe not tear you down, but now I'm going to try and outcompete you. I'm going to try to engage with you in the battlefield of competition because I respect you as an opponent, or as a teammate even. Okay, you and I are best friends. We're like brothers. But there's always some degree of competition, subtle. It's not even negative. But when we have a philosophical discussion, we are trying to win. We're trying to win the point. We're debating a little bit to see whether we can get an intellectual edge. And there's a little bit of joy whenever I win or whenever you win or whatever. There's that struggle between us in the competition for both of us to become stronger, for both of us to be better intellectual competitors in general. I think that that's how men build each other up, is through loving competition in a lot of ways. Is that really what a woman wants from her partner? Is to be respected as a competitor and to be built up by argumentation and by competition all the time? Because that's the male-male dynamic. That's equality. Now, most women don't want that in their relationship, but they keep trying to get desire out of respect. And it doesn't work that way for men. It works that way for women, and that's why I think that's why they're also a bit confused. Women see a guy who is successful and intelligent and winning the competition, and they do feel desire and attraction. And I think culturally we've lost the fact that that doesn't work for men. Like, we can respect a woman, we can see a woman that's killing it and all the things, but we relate to her the way we relate to another man.
I thought this was a good question for us to talk about because it very succinctly brings to the forefront this conflict that people have when they engage in BDSM and fully integrate it sexually and non-sexually as a global dynamic where the man is in charge in the bedroom and out of the bedroom. And in this particular person's question, she's talking about he controls the finances as well. It's very global in this sense, and she's completely okay with it. She takes pains in the question to say that she trusts him, refers to him as the man, lets him make all of the major decisions, does not argue with him, all the things. So it's a tightly integrated BDSM dynamic. It seems to be a very dominant, submissive. She didn't talk a lot about actual BDSM play, but she did say, I call him daddy, I call him sir. The question itself was, made in a sort of BDSM context form. So it's very closely integrated. But when you have this holistic 360-degree submission to a man in the way that she's submitting to him, she runs into dominant Western cultural norms now about what it means to have a good relationality with a male partner as a woman. That is a dominant theme of, I think, relationship dynamic confusion in the West since, I think, Me Too. And since the whole Me Too movement came, that resulted in a very big kind of public renegotiation of what it means to be in a quote-unquote healthy relationship between a man and a woman, especially if the man has dominant predilections. How should the woman be in that sort of a situation? And the response that the culture has come up with is that a woman who is submissive in a holistic sense globally is somehow lesser than or weak or betraying the feminist cause because we're backsliding back to when men controlled everything and this is a terrible thing and how dare you. And that's probably why she doesn't feel supported, is because she does not have a lot of people, I'm assuming this person lives in the West, does not have a lot of people in her milieu that are able to embrace that kind of relationality between a submissive woman and a dominant man. They don't feel like that's okay anymore.
I agree. I think it goes, I would phrase that a little differently. And I don't know, I don't know that Me Too in this regard was as big a deal as in my mind, at least. I think that was more specifically related to taking this already deeply existing trend and applying it very strongly to the initial meeting process between men and women. And I think that's been a very negative thing in terms of how to get relationships started. And we can dive into that maybe in another episode. But in an existing relationship, I think this tension was there for many years, even before that, in exactly those ways. And one of the ways I put this even in my personal ads is I want a woman who takes pride in her role as my submissive, as my woman, as my wife, as my partner. I want someone who takes pride in serving me in those ways, because it used to be in many ways. Like that was, again, this notion of a good wife is you could proclaim proudly, well, I cook and clean. And I met a woman, this was, 15 years ago it must have been. And we were having lunch with a big group and whatever. And all the women, it was mostly women there, were talking about, oh, my husband always wants sex. And like, he just wants it all the time and this and that. And I turn him down and this. And she was very straightforward. She was like, I think I can count on one hand the number of times I've turned my husband down in like the last 10 years. Like, I think I have to be deathly ill before I turn him down and she was like, I enjoy it, first of all, but second of all, like, it's a glue that keeps our relationship together. That's something and she clearly took pride in that statistic. You could tell on her face that this was not something she was resentful of. She was proud of the fact that all these other women are turning their men down left and right. My man has it really good because I don't say no. And that's something that I bring to the table is, hey, like, yeah, I'm proud of the fact that my husband doesn't have to worry about this. Like, again, I think this notion of other women being uncomfortable because in this very visceral way, she has something to be proud of. And they are trying to be proud of more traditionally male accomplishments and are not getting the responses from men that go, or they're getting male responses from men, as I said before, right? And so, yeah, I think this notion of the dominant Western view of, frankly, women acting like men, right? And taking pride in acting like men, going very strongly against the creation of these kinds of relationships that are based on more traditional gender norms. And I think, again, a conversation I had recently with a young woman who was struggling in a variety of ways and pretty clearly submissive, and yet having a hard time, even in that conversation, admitting it. And we were talking, and I was like, well, if you were dating someone, and he's like, oh, hey, go make me a sandwich. And she'd be like, oh, haha, I could tell him to go fuck himself. Like, haha, like, how dare he say that? And I just held my peace and let her kind of say, I was like, is that really what you think? Or would you be pretty excited about it? And she just had never been with someone who was comfortable enough to be like, really? And you could see she was like, no, actually, that would feel pretty good. And not immediately, but we got to that place where she was able to own the true desire she had, not the culturally accepted response. What I initially got was a culturally accepted response, that she knows she is expected to act that way in response to the notion of male dominance. And so she played her persona role. But when you talk more seriously, there's a craving for something else. And one of the interesting things, and I didn't bring this up with her, didn't know her that well, but if she sets up a relationship on the basis of her persona, she's going to have a rough go of it because it's never going to be as intimate. She's going to find a guy who's willing to split things 50-50 and wants her to kill the spiders half the time. And hey, when there's a loud noise downstairs, actually, it's your turn to go down and see whether there's a robber or not. Like, oh, we'll both cower in the closet together and be anxious and scared. Is that really who you want to be with?